destroy.
Welcome back, you filthy exiles. So we've finally got a part 2. I've spent the best part of the last 2 days grinding and farming, and there will be a part 3 because we're going for Mageblood this time. I've got the time, we're going to do it. Magebloods are under 190 div. It's achievable. Anyway, so endpoint DPS for anyone who... Sorry, before we get into that, before we talk about anything else, for anyone who hasn't followed the previous guide, go back and check it out. Basically, this is Divine Ire. We charge it up. I did buy the MTX for it, and we just let off a huge F-Orf laser. Anything within the radius gets hit by like a second channeling damage mod, and then yeah, that's basically everything dies. We're just going to call it a death beam, basically. So anyway, from where we left off last time, things have changed in the build. We're up to with... Oh shit, we can only have 10 stacks. Doesn't matter, it caps out. Does it actually calculate? No, it didn't calculate anything. Right. So more or less, we're rounded up to 17 million DPS, right? So 16.951, that's with 10 stages, and that's with 4 stacks of our sigil of power. If we go down to 1 stack, we're at 15.6 mil, and no stacks, we're at 15.2 mil. So it's not like a game-breaking level of... You're not going to notice that difference in DPS when you're flogging packs in the middle of Delve. Now, predominantly, and I will precursor this, I died like 3 or 4 times in the Elder footage, Uber Elder footage. It can do all the endgame bosses in the standard run. It's designed for Delve bosses, as you would have seen with 400 to 500 and even beyond 500 Lich, Crystal King, and Architect, depending on the mods. It just rips through their health like they're nothing. It's designed to be a build that can take a lot of punishment. Now, the other thing you'll see in here that's weird is effective hit pool is 1.2 mil. This is actually because of the way that the shield calcs on the Aegis Aurora, it's actually 177,000 or closer to, right? So it's not that not as tanky as probably my Vortex build was, but still extremely tanky, does really well, and with a Mageblood, we can amp this right up through the roof because we'll have Basalt and Granite Flask stacking absolutely metric ton of armor, which will get us up to like somewhere close to like 70 or 80,000. So that shouldn't be an issue. We should be pretty chunky, and then we'll respec gear and things like that. And I've got some things that I'm keen to do with the gear to change it again, and then we'll upgrade the DPS even further with Mageblood. So that's basically where this build's at. We just need a Mageblood. So outside of that, let's get into the video. Let's talk through the changes to the gearing. Let's talk through the gem setups. Let's talk through the skill tree and some adjustments I had to make to accommodate things. The other thing I'll make a note of, mana is really hard to balance on this, and you just need to be wary, but we'll talk about how I changed the skill gems to be able to run all of my curses. So everything is under 60 mana, and because we generate mana at a rate of, I think it's like 700 per second, 129 mana regen per second, but then as I'm exposing enemies, it goes up through the roof. Yeah, but anyway, let's talk about this. Let's get into this build and run through the updates. Okay, so let's do a POB check, just so you guys can see what's going on. All right, so POB, Kill all bandits. Major god Brine King. The reason why we need Brine King is mainly for the freeze resistance, 100% chance to avoid being frozen, and chill reduction. And we also are basically immune to being well, we can't be stunned anyway because, and I'll talk about how we got around that too. But it's basically anti-freeze, which is a problem for this build if you don't run it. Now we run Soul of Tukahama now, and mainly because we have to stand still to cast, so we get up to 9% physical damage reduction, which is really good in Delve. And 2% life regeneration, which under Zealot's Oath translates to 2% ES regeneration. So, again, really good stat to have. Time spent stationary, I've got it at 5 seconds. You know, obviously damage goes down if it's not 5 seconds. The reason being is running Nature's Patience. Then we have all of our power charges tick running Ralakesh boots, so we have these perpetually 24/7, so it's all good. Focused is built into the gloves, as we discussed in the previous video, no change to that gear. Onslaught's built into the silver flask that we run on the setup. So we have a silver flask here, and we have increased armor during effect, and this is always an effect. So that's what's causing that. We have Arcane Surge. Now this is actually built into one of our nodes now. So we use Arcane Adept now into the build. So we've got a second class to set up in here. And it means you gain Arcane Surge after channeling for 1 second. So you always have Arcane Surge up if you're channeling, which is good. Yeah, and you get a decent amount of damage. Well, it's not showing damage because it's pre-calculating it, but yeah. Flask is active. We have a Bottled Faith. So yes, we are on Consecrated Ground. This mainly affects our regeneration. So we have 784 regen per second before we kill enemies now. Channeling for 5 seconds. No brainer, like we got to charge our skill up. Convergence, that hits when you clap a boss. That's basically going to trigger, so bossing DPS included. And have you cursed an enemy recently? Yes, and the reason why this is now in the build is because we have this here Sap Psyche, which means regenerate 1% of energy shield per second if you've cursed an enemy recently. Because we use an Anathema, and we also have a cast when damage taken Enfeeble Curse as well, we're always cursing enemies, so we get an extra 1% life regeneration or ES regeneration. Arcanist brands up, Infusion's up, because that's built into the build. Sigil of Power, now you can play with this all you want, like you get 4 stages, and as you sit within the Sigil of Power, the stronger you get. So basically when you go anywhere and you stop and cast, unless you're doing maps, drop your Sigil of Power, and you'll become powerful. Then beyond that, we have Ignite, we're running Herald of Ash. We have Shock, so that's ticked on, and we have 65% instead of 50%. And the reason being is because we now change this node from physical to lightning to 15% increased maximum level of shock, and we do max out with that shock as well. And then we're on Consecrated Ground, pardon me, because we're running Bottled Faith. Now I have Unnerved because I managed to implicit craft that onto my gloves, which is a X-Arc roll as well. So 15% chance to cause Unnerved to enemies for 4 seconds on hit. So that's also in the build now too. Guardian Pinnacle damage, no other changes or anything else. That's pretty much it. Really simple stuff. That's basically where everything's coming from. Okay, so gearing. The wand, we did change the wand out from the previous setup, so I did craft this one. So I managed to get a profane one for, I think it was like 2 or 3 div for the base with a fractured roll for +1 level of lightning spell skill gems. And then I managed to roll on crit multi on it, and then I did a multi-craft to get spell damage and 21% increased cast speed. You can get a better spell damage roll, which will increase your damage. But basically anything close to this is going to be best in slot. If you could get another +1 to gem level, be my guest. If you can try it, this isn't absolutely perfect because of that stupid accuracy roll and the fizz damage roll on it, but it is what it is. I'm just going to let that go. Now, helm hasn't changed at all. Same helm, but we are going to change this helm, and that'll be in the final video, which will probably be in like 3 days if I can get a Mageblood. I did get a better Aegis Aurora, and I managed to get a Veiled one too because it was cool. But it has an implicit roll for take 24% less extra crit damage now, so I can be hit with crits and survive that a hell of a lot easier. Chest is, I think now, I can't remember, I think we may have had the +2 implicit on the previous video. I actually don't think we did. So this will be thanks to Shell Carnage, who just happened to be a random person that I messaged and had this chest. And I bought this for, I think, 10 div. And so this had a +2 implicit roll of socketed AoE gems, which means my Divine Ire now gets to level 30, which is incredibly bloody powerful. So yeah, this would be best, I guess, best in slot if you can get it, and it's just not going to be very cheap. So these are about between 7 to 12 div, give or take. No other changes to my Vivisect, no other changes to my Dragon's Flight. I did get a better Anathema, and this is how we deal with armor on this build. I got an implicit roll for Determination, has 15% increased aura effect. This was like 2 or 3 div. Ideally, I would like to get a 20% effect, and that would give me another 5% armor, but like, what's the difference? We could play within the PoB and whatever, but yeah, it is what it is. Gloves, pretty much the same gloves, no change. Belt, I did recraft my belt, so I managed to get a shaped strength belt, and the reason why I did use strength belt is unless you can get a crystal belt with a strength roll on it, you need the strength. It's necessary. The reason why shaped is because you get a roll on it, and you could do this with a Crusader belt if you could get it too, because Crusader has percentage maximum energy shield. So if you got something similar to this with percentage maximum energy shield, that's going to give you more ES at the end of the day. But shaped belts have a particular roll that rolls on it, which I think is a suffix. No, it's a prefix, which is increased energy shield from equipped body armor, which means I get a small buff off my body armor's energy shield base, which is just an added amount of ES, so we get to 4,580. I'd rather have 5,000, but this is good enough. Boots I upgraded too, so ES is a bit of a problem, so I managed to find Corrupted Relicashes, which were like 3.5 div, and I managed to get an implicit roll for 6% increased energy shield, which doesn't currently exist on the market right now. But these are going down in price, sort of, so just keep your eye out for it. Now, as far as flasks, I have an Onslaught flask in this now. I have my, and which is best in slot for this with increased armor. Basalt with increased movement, 50% crit chance on my Granite flask. Bottled Faith now, which gives me a huge damage buff. And I switch out my crit flask, so if I'm in Delve, I run a phasing flask with block and stun recovery, because it just means when I block, I can recover a lot quicker. And then if I'm mapping, I'm running a rarity flask, so I get 30% increased rarity with cast speed. All my flasks have charges, gain charges when you're hit by an enemy. And that's just to keep them rolling, especially in Delve, really important to keep their uptime. Until we can get a Mageblood and we can craft on effect, this is going to be the best way to approach it. But that's basically the setup, and that's the changes that I made. Okay, gem setups, I haven't really changed too much in the gem setups, so just going through Helm and Shield, I switched the gem setups in, and the reason why is because I was able to add an inspiration support to my cast and damage taken setup, which meant I could run Enfeeble and actually be able to cast it on cast and damage taken, and that wasn't too much of an issue on my Sigil of Power and Flame Dash, which still have a inspiration setup on it. But because I managed to get Arcane Surge onto my tree instead of having to gear it onto my Sigil of Power through Arcane Adept, I was able to do that. So if you're having an issue with casting, your casting damage taken and feeble, definitely switch those around and that'll fix that problem. Outside of that, I did get a level 4 in Power, which popped me up another level, which is getting me to level 30 Divine Ire. Everything else is pretty much all the same from the last video, so there's nothing else to comment there at the end of the day. And I managed to corrupt my Determination to level 21 as well, which gave me a little more armor, but no other changes for that. Okay, skill tree. We made some changes since. I still have been unable to find that Stupid King on the Mist, so just going to close that because it just tilts me to look at. So we had to make some adjustments to deal with our mana and to fit in an extra dual socket because I needed to have a Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame set up in this build to increase my regeneration. Now, I did have an alt set up which was like running Inspiration and whatnot, not Inspiration, Introspection. You could go about that, but this way I just found this worked the best, and it gave me the most regeneration as well in Delve. So I do have Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame, and I did add a new cluster in here with Arcane Adept and Sap Psyche. Now, the Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame gives me Vile Bastion, which means that I get a heap of regeneration based on flat regen and corpses on the ground or enemies that I've killed. And also, beyond that, I cannot be stunned, which means that we could get rid of the unnecessary cluster jewel here and increase our crit. So we now run Precise Focus here and Rapid Infusion. And I managed to balance out my fire res just on the implicit on here too, on the jewel. So my reses are still all capped without any issues. They're just like on the wire basically. But at the same time, I get more crit if I've been channeling, so that's a big advantage. Now, part of that is I did have to drop nodes of Arcane Will, the mana nodes here, and I did have to take out my mastery point here, and I did take out my mastery point here, but I did add those back in the final PoB as well. And that allowed me to branch out over here and then put my Watcher's Eye down here, which fixed my overall build. Took a bit of mucking around. Also, I did sort of bring this back. I did take out the 2% regeneration because that was compensated for in the Vile Bastion Ascendancy, and then I added back over here the 100% increased energy shield from equipped helmet. That's so I could pull my pool up as well. Now, I didn't make any changes to my 2 Ascendancies, so they're still exactly the same as what they were, but eventually I'll adjust those further. And there's no change to the main Ascendancy, but that's it for the tree change. So I'll put all this in the PoB down below so you can see what I've done and follow. And also managed to get a Thread of Hope down here, and I managed to take Light of Divinity, Glancing Blows, and Divine Shield, so I could pull back all these points that were lost down here, and then reallocate them across the tree. So you'll see other changes within here too, potentially, and you just need to replicate that. And I did manage to get to level 96. Predominantly, a lot of my points are now up in this cluster jewel up here, which was a better use of those points to be sitting up there instead of just on random attribute points down here. But yeah, anyway, that's basically it for the tree. Okay, because I get asked this a lot, cosmetics, right? Alright, so I've got Sun Prism Fireworks back attachment, which is when you can see when I blow something up. I do have Scientist Character Effect. Now I have the Stormcaller set here with the Azure Warrior Helm, the Aegis Aurora skin from A Few Leagues with Cracks Pass, and yeah, that's basically it. Now, I've also got Heroes Landing, which you can still get in the MTX packs from last league that are still available, which is where you see like the big explosion, which is really cool. Now, the other thing I've got is Celestial Tempest Shield, Celestial Divine Ire, and there's another Celestial skin here too. Celestial Herald Effect, which is how you see all the explosions everywhere, and that's basically it. That's it for MTXs. Okay, so I feel like I've got one more video left for this build, and it's going to be the final, like, Mageblood update. I'm actually going to, since I'm on Christmas break, I went, bugger it, I'll farm a Mageblood, so keep tuned. Otherwise, in the description below will be the PoB, so you'll be able to replicate this and do what you will. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. But if you've got questions, feel free to ask them in the description below. And yeah, currently this is delving at, like, I got to 517 depth delve. It looks like I can get to about 650 without any major issues at all. And Mageblood, if you want to know, they'll probably get it to about 900 to 1,000, give or take, depending on how I go with that. But I'll let you guys know in a couple days anyway, and you'll see it on stream anyway. But anyway, until next time, don't forget to like and sub to the channel. Don't forget to follow the Twitch. And I'll see you guys later.